Hey there, everyone. Welcome to emelletv. I'm Gabriel, also known as Fake Nichols on social media. I'm a teacher of a script course. I run a company called App here in Brazil, which we try to bring more innovation and easiness of payments to the Brazilian people using the new payment system that our central bank created. That's basically me. I'm also a huge user, a big user of his script and sometimes occasionally OCaml and etc. That's basically me.
Cool. So yeah, hello everybody. I'm David. If you haven't seen like my previous shows, my video quality should have improved a lot.
Yeah. More.
So yeah, I'm David. I live in Barcelona and I work for Ahrefs, the CEO company. I work there half in open source and half in product. I have been involved in the reading community for a while now. I believe 2 years. And we try to interview people who we find interesting and we find that are like people who's driving the communities or any language, any ML language. So yeah, today we're gonna bring Drup.
Okay, so let's welcome him. Hey there.
Hello.
Hello, man.
Welcome to the show. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you here. So let me just post here everywhere.
Same for me.
Yeah. So yeah, we're very happy to have you, Gabriel.
Thank you for
We'll
having
call
me.
you. Yeah. So for the ones who didn't use any of your libraries or didn't pop up in the Discord or don't know you, who are you?
So I'm Gabriel, aka Drup, and I work in research in general, professionally, let's say, on programming languages, and I do lots and lots of OCaml. It's been the case for quite a while, actually, now, since I was a student. And I've done various libraries. I think the most used one I'm responsible of is tyxml, which is to make HTML pages. And I contribute to the OCaml compiler as well, on a semi-regular basis, let's say. And yeah, that's the gist, let's say.
Right. There's one thing that you said that you like subtle music.
Oh yeah, that.
I believe subtle is not the word that comes to mind if you listen to the music that you refer. So what's your taste of music?
So it varies. It varies on the moment quite a bit. It's usually metal. So
Right.
These days I have phases. Sometimes it's a bit of electronic music. Sometimes it's funk. Lately, it's quite a bit of funk.
But you do not work with.
Oh yeah, I do.
Ah, you do?
Yeah, all the time. I turn up the music when I wake up. I turn off the music when I sleep. It's
right. Yeah. Perfect. So aside from, of course, being a researcher and OCaml, and what are your other passions?
So I do quite a bit of biking and climbing. That's the two things nice. I do outside. And otherwise, I really like science fiction in general, and so both reading and watching.
Like Dune, right. For instance.
Yeah, I've seen it. It is an interesting movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And why you don't have Twitter?
Sorry.
Why keeps you outside Twitter?
Oh, the drama.
The drama.
The drama.
Oh no.
What
yeah.
what drama? What drama? What drama are you referring to?
No, in general, no.
Okay.
More seriously, I think the limitation of character message makes it a bit confrontational. In that you cannot. I don't think you can explain yourself in such a limited message when. I mean, if it's just to tweet funny things, it's okay. But when the topic becomes even slightly controversial, you cannot explain yourself in such short messages. And in this case, it becomes confrontational too quickly, and it's. I think it's a bit too
That's
too
true.
much. So for this reason, I'm not fond of it. And yeah.
Right. So you said. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go on.
So you said that you're a researcher. So that makes total sense because I think trying to summarize our research into a tweet, I don't think that's a good idea. But my question is more like, how did you get into academia in general? How you get into university, and how you end up being a researcher?
That's a good question. So originally, during my study, it became pretty clear at the beginning that I liked math and then computer science and programming in general, but computer science, the science part specifically. And then I did my study in a school which is called ENS, and which tends to favor research, really. And so I got it like that, really. It was natural to try it. And then I did a PhD and I liked it and I wanted to keep going. And so I kept going, really.
Right.
It's more of a logical progression.
Yeah. What's your job as a researcher?
There are sort of two aspects to most people that work in research. One aspect is, pushing the boundaries of science,
right?
With big letters and
right.
lots of gold, lots of gold everywhere.
Okay.
But in practice, it means writing paper and looking for funding, as you know. And in my case, it's also programming because I consider that as part of my research. And so, but that's specific to me in a way. Not all researchers are like this. Another aspect is teaching. And I do also quite a bit of teaching. Not as much as other researchers, but this year in particular, I teach compiling. So it's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy about that.
And do you actually you have a team? You have like a boss? How is like the structure?
So in France, and in particular in the institute I work in, which is Inria, it's a national institute. Research is organized into teams, as you said, and so I have a team leader, but the organization is pretty flat.
Right.
So in particular, the team leader does not really decide the topic of my research. I research sort of what I want, we try collectively to keep a common theme to the team. Well, so to speak.
A topic.
Yeah. To keep the team on similar topics or connected topics rather. But in practice, we have all our specialties, and in particular, my team leader doesn't really work at all on languages directly. He work on mostly on simulation of hardware in general, trying, for example, to simulate supercomputers.
Okay.
So it's
Okay. So your area of research is languages in general?
yeah, I work on languages in general and statically typed one in particular. And my specialty is sort of the design of nice languages or nice feature in languages.
Okay, who chooses to be nice? Who decides that are
Well,
nice?
I decide if they're nice or not.
That's a good one.
I'm the one making them.
Right.
No, but in practice, nice means safe in my case. Often, not always, but often it does mean safe.
Right.
And functional,
so-
because I like it.
Okay. So yeah, if you would say what's a beautiful language, you would say that it's safe and functional, or what else? What else a language needs to be? Let's say cute or pretty. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about cute, but nice. Let's look at nice.
Yeah. Let's do nice. Yeah.
So it's a very subjective notion, obviously.
Yep.
Personally, I want a trade-off between something that is easy to write and something that is safe. And it's always going to be a trade-off, because if you push the safety too much, you obtain something like Idris or Coq, and those things are very safe, but they're not easy to use. It's very difficult to use, to write
Right.
programs in them. And they have their place. I mean, for example, if we want to write things who needs a degree of confidence that is very high, then you want all the safety you can get. If you're going to write controllers for, I don't know, a train, you need all the safety you can get.
Totally.
But if you're writing a web page, you might not need that much safety, and so you want something that is easier to write. And so,
Right.
Personally, the language I'm interested in are in between, something that is nice to write, but by default will give you safety.
Right. Would you say that OCaml fits exactly
Yes.
that area?
In my opinion, OCaml is pretty nicely balanced from that point of view. Rust is also pretty nice. It's a bit harder to write, but for good reasons, because it's lower level. But it's sort of the balance is also pretty good, given the fact that it wants to be low level because it's a target, really. Yeah.
Right. Right. So, did you study OCaml in your career, or how you end up writing OCaml and loving OCaml?
So it was my first language. Well, not exactly.
Okay.
It was not exactly my first language, but it was the first language that I had in school.
Right. What was your previous language or first language?
My first language would be Visual Basic.
Nice.
Yes.
Do you remember the version?
Of Visual Basic? Certainly not. I remember I had to do some Visual Basic because I had an internship during high school, and I wanted to do some programming, and so they had me program various stuff in, I think it was Excel macros, and so lots of Visual Basic.
Okay, so how long have you been writing OCaml?
So I need to count down. It's quite a long time. It was just before I stopped high school, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 years.
12 years.
12 or 15 years, something like that.
Right. Would you say that there's anything that you don't know about OCaml?
About OCaml? Oh, so, well, okay, it depends. About the as a user or as a I mean about
Like,
the
of course, like if you contribute to the compiler, it doesn't mean that you have like all the compiler in your head, but as a user, as like as the outside interface.
as the outside interface. For the language side, I probably know everything that I need to know. There are things that I do not know on the details of the performance side, in particular, because I mean, so for example, I was recently discussing, well, not recently, but a few years ago, I was discussing with someone from Href, and he was telling me that, yeah, sure, you can run OCaml program with 1 tera of heap, and that's fine.
Okay.
Yes, apparently it is fine, and you need to do stuff for this, but I am not aware of them.
Right. Do you know who was?
I could find it again
Right.
if I were to look at the people
Right.
in Href.
So yeah, the question here would be, how close are you to the companies that write OCaml?
So I have quite a few friends in various companies, personal friends. I mean, people that I know. I wouldn't. But I do not have any professional relationship with any.
Right.
In particular, for if I were to give an example, I've done an internship with Thomas Gazanier, who's boss of Tarides, and so I know I know him pretty well, and various people like that. So.
And what's your favorite feature of the language per se?
That's always a difficult question.
Yeah.
There are so many features. You could say there are too many features. I think the favorite feature could be probably something which is in a way feels sort of natural but is rather unusual. Which is a combination of static typing, functional, and imperative in the same language.
Right.
And you have 2 of the 3 in many languages. But the fact that you have all 3 of them is rather rare, and that's it allows you to do things that are interesting.
Right. Because I think I often hear like that sentence or like the description of OCaml being like functional and with escape hatch of being imperative. If you come from the imperative world, if you write, I don't know, Java, or you might write like C or C# maybe, you know very clear what's your code style of writing. You know that you code imperatively, and you know like solid principles, and you know like the kind of like holding knowledge behind. I don't, and if you study functional programming, you see it as well in these patterns in OCaml. I rarely saw the language like being together on like I rarely saw like a design where you see functional and imperative in the same module or in same library. I
Okay,
find it like,
I see what you mean.
yeah, you can call a function, like you can call a method, and then like because the interface might be imperative, but you're still in the functional layer. Or I really see them
Well, yes,
like
but that's the
merging.
interesting thing. For example, if you look at, for example, the iter library
Okay.
for iterators, it's a library by Companion Cube, who you probably know as well, and it's basically iterators that whose the type signature is pretty much an iter function as list.iter. And if you look at this library, it looks like functional programming all over. I mean, the interface is
Yep.
gloriously functional. Every single function in this library uses references underneath.
Okay.
And the fact that you can do that is great.
Yeah. Like I found like the description not being like super clear with that example. I think that example is very like clear, where the two paradigms can play pretty well together, and one can be hidden from each other. And I think that's kind of like what it's the brilliant or like the beauty a little bit of OCaml, but just the description never felt like expressed that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so the fact that you can hide it, you can encapsulate it, and only expose, the nice functional combinators that are easier to use. Is the part that is important.
Cool. And just talking more about the beta language, how do you see the community of OCaml? You have been like writing for 12 years, so like I think there's kind of like a time lapse. But how have you seen the community during those years?
So when I started, there was no community, you could say. In that there were people using it, but you could not really distinguish or unify, community really. There were attempts. So people from that time could remember something called Godi, which was a sort of attempt at a centralized packaging system before OPAM and before most other way of doing packages. But it didn't feel cohesive. And then progressively, things improved. And in the last 8 years or something, since OPAM arrived, you could say, but it started. It's a movement that started before OPAM really landed. Then things have taken up quite a bit, and now there is a real cohesive community where people talk together, and so on and so forth.
Right. I remember hearing that there were a few years where OCaml was like very dark, in the sense of like not many people were interested in it. But
there was a dark period, yes.
Yeah, I know how to talk about like the kind of that era, but then suddenly I remember this. I don't know. I might fail a year, but 2008 I think was the year where the compiler moved from GitLab to GitHub, and then the community started
was
like
part
playing
of this
together.
movement. Yeah.
Right. Were you part of that, or
no? Well, I complained that it was not on GitHub, and then it was on GitHub, and then I started contributing.
Okay. So, as a person that you are behind a lot of libraries that some people write, use, and put in production, how does that feel?
I'm very happy
from the
about
years,
it.
right?
Every time I'm slightly surprised oh, someone is using that. But yeah, I'm always really happy about people finding my stuff. I'm also okay. In particular, I'm pretty proud when people find it stable enough to use. Well, stable and reliable enough to use in production, for instance.
Right.
And there are some libraries I know that I mean I write them and I don't expect them to be really production ready. But yes, I'm always happy when people.
Right. And do you have any requests for comments that you feel that you like a lot from the language? Are you aware of anything that you like?
So you're talking specifically about the RFC repo, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really like, so it's a bit more of a moonshot than the usual RFC, but the one that I really like is an Unbox type by Stephen Dolan.
Right.
And there are a few offshots of that. So Jeremy Yallop has been working a little bit of it on it. Gabriel Scherer as well. And this one, I think it's a great feature that I would also like to work on it, but I'm not sure I will have the time, as always. But it's so to recall, Unbox type are
Can you try to describe it for the ones that
maybe
they don't solve the talk, or is the context?
So the idea is that so far in OCaml, when, for example, you have let's try to, for example, you have a type which is implemented by a record, for instance, and you have a list of those things, a list of T. Then, or an array is slightly simpler, an array of T. In practice, it is an array containing pointers which point to records. And the idea of Unbox type is to try to avoid this indirection, to try to inline the records in the array.
Right.
And it's something that is very natural to do in low-level languages, so C, C++, Rust, and so on. But in a higher level language like OCaml, it's complicated because of the GC, because of a wide variety of reasons.
Right.
And so, but it's something that is pretty much necessary to really fine-tune stuff, in particular numerical things and numerical
What do you mean by
computations.
numerical things?
So, for example, computations that use arrays and matrices of numbers, or matrices of things that are not matching integer but still numbers, like complex numbers and so on.
Right. Okay.
You need that kind of things to make it fast. You need something that allows you to inline the memory representation.
Right. So just the fact that half the memory are not pointers, are real values. It will make much easier for performance.
Yes.
Right.
It gives you more control in general.
Right.
Over the specific representation of what you're manipulating, and
right. Which brings me to the kind of like the next question that I wanted to ask, which is like OCaml seems like very solid, and in the sense of like most of the decisions that have been made are based on backwards compatibility, but very coherent with the sort of other decisions that have been made in the community based on like the package manager or any sort of like things that happens on the platform, why quality is so important for OCaml? Why quality and performance are like the top priorities?
Well, I'm not sure. So there is one above priority.
You can disagree. Like you can disagree. You can say that the whatever.
No, but I mean, there is one
language.
above one of those, which is to make sure that the language is safe. And I mean that in a matter of, a priority of a bug report. If there is a bug report that something is unsafe, that you can cause seg faults, it's straight up to the top immediately.
Right.
But yes, you're absolutely right. I'm not sure I mean, I'm not part of the OCaml core team, and certainly not part of the original team. So I'm not sure I could really tell about their motivation with this regard. It's definitely one thing that is important for the core team to really have something stable. It was much more stable before. You might.
Okay.
It's
okay. I didn't know that.
Yes. The evolution of the language has drastically accelerated in the last few years.
Okay. Okay. Here we come to drama. Like I want to hear those.
No, not really. No, it's a matter of priority. But in a way, the community is bigger. It has more actors. Some of these actors really want some features.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of things drive more changes. And I think that's a very good thing for the language. Previously, most of the users of OCaml were research people, and it was understandable they didn't want to change their prototype regularly. Like, for example, they write a prototype, they do not want to have to rewrite it for the next version of OCaml. And so stability was naturally important. Nowadays, lots of industrial people are using OCaml, and they value more features. They value some new features more than they value absolute stability.
Totally.
And in particular, I mean, Multicore is obviously going to break some stuff. But I think everyone agrees it was a breakage.
Yeah. So exactly, Multicore is my next question. Like, how you see the future?
It's going to be interesting.
How Multicore will change? Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Why? Or I don't know.
So first off, people on Hacker News are not going to be able to say that OCaml has no Multicore. That's the first thing. But no. It's so I agree with Sean. I'm slightly more enthusiastic about the effect system than I am about Multicore. The effect system is going to be really glorious, I think. We're going to be able to do things pretty amazing. But yeah, no, I think it opens new use cases that are. So far, it was difficult to write them in OCaml. It was just difficult. And now we're going to be able to use a language like OCaml for it. And it's difficult to say in advance what we will get from Multicore. It's and the the people working on Multicore also agree with that, in that they did not try to prescribe use cases, and that's very smart of them. I fully agree with that. Let's provide the primitives and let people run wild for a while.
Yeah, let things fall naturally. Yeah.
And I think that's the best you should do with very general features like this. Provide all the tools, make them safe enough not so that people do not shoot themselves. At least try, and let them do lots of things. But yeah, effects are going to be fun. I'm going to write really weird libraries with effects.
Right. Yeah, everybody has a few ideas, but yeah, I agree. Effects would be like we change. I don't know any other language, and I'm being like a total newbie here, but what other languages do have effects? I remember a few, but from the big players, I don't see saw effects anywhere. Or
so big mainstream languages, none. Research prototypes, quite a few. So the really first effect language is EFF, and it's a prototype by Andrew Bauer in particular, who is a researcher and does lots of work on effects. And there are a few other prototypes. And yeah, Sean mentioned Common Lisp, and Common Lisp had weird operators that sort of look like effects. Rather, sort of look like things you could do with effects, but in a significantly harder to use way.
Right.
But yes, it's a first in a big language, and that's sort of what makes it exciting.
Right. Like how familiar? I just gonna do like a moonshot. How familiar are you with JavaScript?
Quite a bit. Depends which parts.
Right. So for the front ends, or for the people who has been like here on the front end side of things, do you know what Redux is?
Yes. So it's. I think I know about it. I think I've seen about it. I'm not sure. Remind me.
Right. So Redux is like this kind of like state management library that kind of like set in stone how people would manage state in React and maybe all the other frameworks. But it all their like idea were just like you have a single state object represents the entire state of your page, and you can only update with pure functions that depend on the previous state. So like all your operations are synchronous and pure. So easy to test. Yeah, like the whole speech speaks for themselves. But there was like one thing that like a few people try to do effects on it, right? So you wanted not like your state needs to be derived by HTTP request, or can be derived to reading from somewhere, or something asynchronous. And a few attempts from creating effects in JavaScript has been like there for quite a while. Are you familiar with some, or I'm just speaking Chinese?
So I'm not terribly familiar with people trying to do that. Redux is significantly different from effects, though. So it's a very different approach. It sort of attacks the same problem. I agree, but the approach is completely different. I do not know about attempts at adding effects in JavaScript. There are async awaits stuff that are a subset of effects.
Right.
So async await is definitely a subset of effects. It's a,
Right.
well, or rather, it is one specific effect.
Right. So one of the libraries that pop up into the ecosystem that I use a lot, it was Redux Saga, which tried to make like all the keywords that you can yield a computation, repeat a computation, and try to throw and catch a computation, the same concepts as you would see in effects, but yeah, of course, on the browser. So
yeah, if I remember Redux correctly, and React is also like this as well, it is closer to something we call synchronous programming or synchronous languages. And they have a similar organization, with the inputs that are gathered, and you branch things so that things depend in the right way, and you try to have outputs at the end and you plug the inputs into your page, basically.
right.
And there is quite a lot of people working on synchronous languages, and the funny thing is that I think the people working on synchronous languages usually design them for embedded systems or critical systems, and then people reinvented it for web programming. And most of the two community did not realize they were doing the same thing, which is sort of hilarious. It happens quite a lot.
Yeah, like the first time that I arrived to, like, that's a personal experience where like I arrived to Typeform, that was like my previous company, and then I said, "Oh, that's a state machine," and everybody was like, "What's a state machine?" But I was like, "Okay, that's the one thing that I remember. Like the only thing that I remember from the first year of university is state machines, right?" And then I explained the thing, and nobody wanted to follow me, and then few years later, there's no one who doesn't speak the same concept. So I've been that. That's true. That's true. Sean said, why are you asking if you're familiar with JavaScript when you work on Ilium? So that's kind of like a silly one for me.
Well, yes and no. I mean, because I'm familiar, because of Ilium, I'm familiar with JavaScript as a target, but only the base language.
Right.
I have fairly limited knowledge of the ecosystem. I know the big players, but not much more than that.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So can you explain what's Ilium?
So Ilium is it's the language I worked on when I did my PhD. And so it is both a language extension and a framework. So it has both aspects. And basically, in general, it is a framework to program web application. Nowadays, you will say full stack in OCaml.
Yep.
And Ilium in particular, the language in particular. So there is a framework around it where you have, lots of utility, lots of widget, and so on and so forth. But in particular, there is a language component. And if you were to take the modern vocabulary, so to speak, you could say it's a language to make isomorphic OCaml.
Right.
So the vocabulary isomorphic has appeared after.
Right.
And I always find it sort of funny, the using this vocabulary, but oh well, it's what people decided to use. And so to rephrase that, it allows you to write OCaml on the server and on the client. And so there is a compiler from OCaml to JavaScript that is part of the project. So that's GS of OCaml. And on top of that, there is also some additional tools in the language extension that allows you to interleave pieces of client and pieces of server, and even to put them inside each other. So for example, you write a button, you write it on the server so that it's generated on the server, and you put it event handler on the button, but obviously it's an event handler, so you need to add the client code for the event handler. And you have a notation that allows you to insert a piece of code that is on the client inside the piece of code that is on the server. So you can nest stuff like this. And the compiler will automatically cut things into pieces and compile them appropriately.
Yeah, like the first time that I arrived to Ilium, I didn't understand a thing. But then after you confirmed the interview, I arrived to your PhD, which I could understand. So that's I think that's on, like, I felt very proud of understanding. But it is funny that you now, like, the modern concept of the web, like kind of like redefine or put concepts in top of like what you try to describe. I don't know how many years back. So when I saw like of course, like the extension of putting server side code in the client's code, I thought, oh, super smart. But then when I saw that you could nest, like, of course, server side code inside the client side code, I said, okay, there's people today that that tries to achieve that with JavaScript, and yes, they couldn't, or definitely.
Actually, there are a few people that are pretty successful at it in research.
Yeah.
In distributed non-prototype stuff, less so. But yes, in research there are a few things. Yeah.
So would you say that you created like the research part, and how that end up into the industrial software? How could you market that, where like me or my team that we are like solving a business problem can pick up and solve the thing?
It is complicated. I've never been very good at that part, really. It's always complicated for me to do this. It's sort of advertisement in a way, but you know, it's a specific kind of advertisement. I think that people that are good at this lead with a use case, really. You try to pick a specific use case, and you advance the solution to show that it solves this use case specifically, and you try to pick a use case that lots of people are interested in, and then you pick up like this.
Right.
But it's usually not how I sell stuff.
Right.
So it's difficult. But for Ilium specifically, I think there are lots of things that can. I mean, in general, the language is the project in general has an appeal that is pretty natural, given that what it realizes. The main problem would more be the tooling around Ilium. To try to sell it, we would need to dramatically improve the tooling around it.
Right.
And that's a limiting factor right now for Ilium. It is an excellent concept. It is an excellent project, but the tooling is really bad.
Totally.
So, which is a shame. Unfortunately,
which is a shame.
And to improve the tooling, it takes lots of man-hour. And
experience, pain, yeah, totally, and time for sure.
And time,
for sure,
mostly time.
Yeah. So after Ilium, I don't know how many years or time, you are the author of tyxml. I did not pronounce that properly, but yeah, you can type safe generate HTML.
Yeah. So I'm not the original author.
Oh, my notes are bad. Well, okay. So you are the maintainer.
No, it's pretty hidden. Yeah.
Okay, so
no,
you
but I
stole
mean,
it
there
from
is a story
someone,
around that,
but
in a way.
Okay, so go on.
Yeah.
Go on, please.
So it's also part of the Ilium project, or the Oxygen project, rather. But it's
right. Yep.
But it was definitely created as okay, we have the OCaml to JavaScript part, we have the server. What do we need to create more web pages? Well, we need to output HTML, so let's write that. And so people created the first version of tyxml, and I took over the maintenance when I started doing my PhD because I thought it was a fun library. Originally, it was a bit limited, and we extended it and advertised it quite a lot.
Right.
Since I've taken the maintenance of it, and so that's why it's quite a bit more used now. And one of the really big so apart from simplifying so it's easier to use, one of the two big things really was first making it so that we can make reactive HTML.
Could you explain that?
So you can, so it's not reactive in, so it's not the React JS, it's the OCaml React. Yes.
Right. The observables in I don't know if that's the name, but yeah, it's like
yes. It is similar to observable, yes. And so you can sort of make your you can basically make an HTML tree where part of the HTML tree are observables, are linked to observables. And so we changed tyxml so it's compatible with that. And that was one of the big change. Took quite a bit of work to make it do that. And the other one is the syntax extension. That was also a pretty big thing.
Right. Yeah, because I know that happened like after that, but how Reason or JSX influenced the XML?
So I don't remember the timeline exactly, but the first syntax extension was, I would not say very much influenced by JSX. It was something that let me rephrase. The first syntax extension was in CamLP4, which was before PPX. And that was before Reason, GSX, and all that.
Right.
That was quite a bit interior to all these other projects. And we translated it to PPX when that arrived. And then more recently, lots of people started using GSX, and GSX is extremely well integrated into Reason, much more than what we could provide in the OCaml syntax. That sort of, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's much better to writing HTML. I mean, the syntax is just simply designed for it in a way.
Yeah.
pretty quickly I thought, okay, I would really like, I mean, we could totally repurpose the syntax that is designed for GSX and Reason and GSX and React, and just repurpose the syntax so that we can build other HTML with it.
Right.
And eventually, various contributors made the first version, and from so on. I helped them, and we finally made it, and it's very nicely done, and I'm pretty happy about it.
Right. So HTML, like the spec of HTML is huge.
Yes.
And sometimes ambiguous. Yeah, it's like tupelomorphic, I guess. That's the word that I was trying to find. How can you like start a library and like creating a tool to make that safe? What like do you think that that's the right kind of like quality that we talked at the beginning, where like you could say that it's easy to write and safer?
It's borderline, yes.
Right. So yeah, can you explain a bit more how can you create a tool where you have a interface where feels safe, but then from the interface underneath you have like a very dynamic or either dynamic and huge language?
So so it all originated in XML, like everything. Like you know, there's this famous joke about when you know Lisp, you look at the word and everything is parents.
Right.
And when you know too much XML, you look at the word and everything is
Angle brackets. Right.
Angle brackets.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, but yeah, when tyxml was created, HTML was based on, it was HTML, it was XHTML. So it was
Right.
before HTML5, it was XHTML, and it was really a subset of XML. With a DTD, which is like a schema for XML documents.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that lots of people worked on DTDs and XML, in particular in the French research community. And so lots of people looked at it and say, I can encode that into various type systems. And they did.
Right.
And it turns out you just have to encode a state automata into your type system. Emphasis on the just.
Okay.
And it's and that's how tyxml works, really. It's pretty hidden, but there is a state automaton with a huge state because HTML is big. That encodes the validity of the HTML document. And originally it was very complicated. It checked lots of the rules of HTML.
Mm-hmm.
And we progressively decided to simplify it so that it only checks the most obvious one, the ones that you make easily, really, rather.
Right.
And there are two reasons for that. It was just too complicated to use. That's the first reason. And the second reason is that browsers are actually more and more resilient. And you can give them slightly garbage HTML and they're okay with it. So
yeah, why you bother? Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
For me, the insanity, the moment where like my mind like explode is where I like the first time that I use it, right? Like when you place
the type errors are a problem.
Well, of course are. I didn't want to criticize that, but like the moment where like you put, I don't know, something that you think that has been valid forever in your HTML, and then
it says no.
Like it says no. It's like how no? Like, how is that valid? Like, has been working like this forever, and then you go to the spec or even a single table that you thought, oh, that's trivial, and then like the library says, no, you are completely wrong, and you have been wrong since day one. Yeah, I think it's cruelty, and then you start thinking, you arrive to a moment where you're thinking like, how that works, like how's there's like a type system with a tree. Like, for me, like, I needed to grab the person that recommend my library to explain me like how that is inside. So yeah, definitely impressive work for sure.
Yeah,
Impressive.
the main idea was not from me. It was from so I'm not sure there is an original author, a single one. It's more like sort of a consequence of people that did research on XML and DTDs, and then some people in the Oxygen project decided, oh, we can apply that to HTML and get a super safe library to write HTML.
Right, definitely. Aside from tyxml, what are other efforts that are worth mentioning that you are proud to create or being part of?
Sorry, can you do that again?
Aside from like, we need to change the name. Apart from generating HTML from OCaml, what are other libraries that you feel proud that you have been part of?
That's a good question. So one that I feel really proud is Mirage DSL.
Right.
So Mirage, if for people who don't know, is a library operating system. Basically, it's a bunch of pieces of operating systems, and then you combine them to create what we call the unikernels, which are an application combined with the pieces of operating system it needs, and not more than that. So it allows you to do very, very lean applications that contains barely anything really, just enough for them to function and not more than that. And it is very useful for embedded project or even to spun application onto a supervisor, for example, for cloud services. And so Mirage is a pretty big project. There are lots of libraries in it and lots of people worked on it. And I did an internship working at OCaml Labs, which is sort of the birthplace of Mirage. And I worked quite a lot on a DSL to make the configuration of a unikernel to explain how to assemble the application. And so it's something where you say, okay, I want, for example, give me a device that supports a FAT file system, give me an Ethernet connection, give me that. And underneath, it will expose configuration options. And so, for example, you could say, okay, you ask me for an Ethernet connection. Do you want a bare metal one that needs some driver? Do you want something that connects through the host system? Do you want something else? And that's the use cases are pretty varied, and there are quite a lot of users of Mirage, and so they use the DSL I worked on, and apparently they've been pretty happy so far. The DSL have stood the test of time in a way, because it's still kicking pretty strong, and Mirage has had 3 versions since then, Mirage 2, 3, and 4 recently.
Okay.
And the DSL is still there, and it works very well, and people are changing things and adding new things and so on. And so
Yeah.
I guess it means I did
that's
a good
worth to be
job.
proud. Yeah. That does the job. Like even the concept of Mirage. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's Anil. That's
Yeah.
all Anil. I'm definitely not too.
Yeah, we should invite Anil just to talk about Mirage and
Oh,
never
yeah,
ask anything about OCaml. So
well, he will absolutely be able to talk about Mirage for as many hours as you have, comfortably.
Right. Right. So regarding the future of OCaml, we saw that the community kind of like moved into GitHub and then exploded, and then on next year we're coming with Multicore, and further promises are the effects. How you see like the future of the language? Like now you have been like coding for like 12 years, and how you see like the language on the next 10 years?
I try very carefully not to do predictions.
Okay.
No, but
Okay.
more seriously, no. I think the next step is definitely going to be about I mean, there are various things regarding the type systems that have been in progress, so to speak, for a while. So the type effect system is in the air. It's not going to land with 5.0, definitely not. It's going to be for after. And so that's up in the air. Linear type system are obviously trending because Rust has been a fantastic example of what you could do with them, and so it's also up in the air, and so on and so on.
Right.
So that's on the language evolution side. On the community side, it's so difficult to answer this because
would you like to be like the new Rust? Would you like to be like the kind of like hyper hype or hyper growth as a language?
Are we the new Rust or the old Rust? Because I mean, it was designed before.
Okay.
Right. It's not a
like,
but
that's true. But I see what you mean. Like I think you got what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I do not think it will happen because the industry backing just does not have the same size. I mean, when you have such a huge flagship project like Servo and the rewrite of Firefox in Rust. Well, it's not the complete rewrite, but it's such a flagship project that it will naturally gather a lot of people. And even if they do not specifically work on this kind of field, they will be interested. And also, Rust is a fantastic design, and Steve Kablik is an extremely good language designer. But yes, I do not think it will happen. What you say, OCaml exploding to the level of Rust, just because OCaml has been there for a while. It's a language with quite a bit of baggage. As you said before, we sort of care about stability, so we're not going to break everything just to make it nicer. And so I do not see it exploding like that, but I do see the community keep growing, at its pace.
Because
but I mean, on the other hand, Reason and Buckle script were unexpected, and so things unexpected can happen.
So yeah, I wanted to ask exactly that. Not talk about Reason yet, or not talk about Reason. Just because because the paradigm of being functional is completely different from most of the fashion, or most of people are what are used to, and that kind of breakage a little bit. But I see more often where functional styles or just tiny concepts get very famous, just gets into the mind of the people, and just Rust might be one of the case. So if in my company, my first company, we saw the kind of trend of, we had the PHP kind of a huge service, or a lot of microservices in PHP, or we need to do performance, or blah 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 blah, and then we said to go with Go, and then someone said, we should look into Rust. If you see the evolution of just the language or just the functional style between the three of them, you see that Rust introduced some concepts where they were not inexistent in the past, and then same happened with JavaScript. I think JavaScript at the beginning had 0 to none, and then over and over we keep seeing more functional concepts getting into the mainstream.
Yeah. So
would you agree? Would you agree with all the kind of what I have said?
So it's an interesting evolution. I would say there are more and more functional idioms in mainstream languages.
Right.
And a very recent example, Java now has functions, C++ has functions, Java now has functions, Python pretty much has static type system now.
That's true.
I actually use Python for some of my courses, and we make use of the static type checkers quite a lot, and it works pretty well. I mean, for all intent and purposes, it's almost a static type language. Python is going to have pattern matching in the next version. And so on and so forth. And so most of the mainstream languages are gaining all these features that are usually present in statically typed functional programming languages. So you could say we're winning in a way. We're winning not by making people use our language, but by putting our features in other language.
Right. Your sense of winning is being on the reference on their design.
Yeah.
Right. That's
sure.
the winning.
That's the winning. Yeah. I think there's a big part of the adoption aspect is how familiar or how alien things feel to programmers, and so the syntax has an enormous influence. And Rust people were very clever in a way, in that they adopted basically a C++ syntax to design a language that is ML. And that was very clever of them. And that improved the appeal of the language.
Would you say the same for Reason? Sorry to interrupt. That was
absolutely. I totally think that Reason was a pretty good idea. I mean, you have Reason as the syntax. There are two aspects. No, but I mean, you have to differentiate the syntax and the ecosystem, so to speak. And the syntax is absolutely a good idea. Making a language like OCaml more appealing to users who feel that the syntax is alien to them. And I'm not particularly attached to syntax in general, as most people that do research on programming languages are. It's pretty common not to be attached to syntax. The importance is that the programmer are using tools that allow them to write safer and nicer programs. So write safer programs and more easily. And whatever the mean to do that, it's okay. It's fair game. That's sort of my position as a researcher. If you have to use various Trojan horses to make programmers write ML or write code in ML programming language, it's okay.
Right. Totally. So there's definitely a change, or there has been like a lot of people that arrive to the OCaml community that comes from the reason, right?
Yeah.
Do you see those like accidents, right? Do you see like those things are not like definitely not planned?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they're not totally accident in a way, because it was the goal of reason in a way, to make people use OCaml, but coming from other perspective.
Right. Yeah. So, and the other goal of reason, or the other goal of AggleScreen reason, was very similar with the goal of JS of OCaml. So the idea where like you could pack it and then bring it to the web. So why do you think that there was like another alternative, even though that they have like conceptually or some like philosophy differences, or even like conceptually differences? The goal was the same.
So actually, I think the main thing is that the goal was not the same.
Okay.
In that GS of OCaml was you take OCaml program and you emit GS program, and you do not care to the slightest what the GS program looks like. And in particular, you do not. It was so the idea was never to really try to integrate into the GS ecosystem for GS of OCaml. You could use GS library the same way OCaml programmers use C library. But that's it.
With through bindings, right?
Yeah, through bindings. But that was the limit of the integration. Whereas Reason's point of view was, we want to to really interact with the NPM ecosystem in particular. And as for Buckle script, it's I think there is a bit of happenstance here, because it was Buckle script happens to start development at that time, and the main developer of Buckle script, whose name escapes me right now, saw an opportunity and decided to just bet on it.
Right.
I think it would have been less work to adapt GS of OCaml for the need of Reason and the NPM integration.
Wow.
But that's personal opinion.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting to know. I like from the outside or as a user. Yeah, that doesn't feel like, I don't know, that if that was that easy, why we could not benefit from the both worlds. Yeah, but that's just like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Definitely. There was a question by Sean. That was more like
Lots of questions by Sean.
a lot of questions. Sean should be a part of the show for sure. So how did you work with Dolan and Fred? How will you collaborate with the community? I think I kind of answered you a similar question, but how do you work closely with the compiler team or the people who run the core?
So it's there are different aspects of it. Some people I work personally because, well, we get along, so to speak.
Right.
So, for example, Fred, we get along, so we do things together occasionally, and also because we have some taste in common on what the kind of things we do, and so in that case, that's particularly the case for Octacron. We do lots of small projects together, just because we're interested in sort of the same thing in the compiler, and so we do them together. And also because Octacron is basically the official maintainer of OCaml nowadays, and so he does everything. But apart from that, usually it just happens through GitHub by sort of exchange of things we do. For example, occasionally I will have someone message me and say, please, can you review this pull request? In exchange, I will review yours. These kind of things. There are I'm not directly part of the core team, and so there are synchronization that happens that I'm not part of, but that's okay. I mean, it's not my job. But yeah, usually I try to interact through the review process and review the things that I find interesting, because, well, there are some things, there are some part of the compiler I'm an expert on, and there are a few experts, and so I might as well participate because I want to see. There are things that I want to see merge because they are good changes, and I want to have them into the compiler as well. And so it happens like that mostly.
Right. I have like a lot of questions about the review process, but I believe we're running out of time. And the review process for like from the outside seems
so many questions.
Super interesting. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. You will have lots of different viewpoints on the review process.
Right. Yeah.
Depending on who you ask.
True.
The main thing I can say about it is that it's occasionally a bit long.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. So but, I think I have like I'm just on the half of the questions that I wanted to ask, and we are like run out of time, pass by along. So
okay.
I think I would save you for another time, and we can talk more specifically about maybe OCaml or maybe some other libraries. So definitely you would be invited again to the show.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. It was very interesting. I'm very glad you invited me.
Yeah. So thanks for your time. I think I just lost track of the time. Yeah, thanks for spending the time with us for sure.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. That was like great. I think we had questions for hours and hours here, but we can set it up another time to talk more. I'm pretty sure everyone also in the chat was like pretty excited about all the subjects. But like Dave said, thank you for your time. Like the full video will be available on YouTube soon, so everyone that couldn't join will be able to watch it as well. And that's it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again, Gabriel, for your time. Like that was amazing. And that's
Thanks.
it. See you, everyone.
Yeah, and thanks Drup for like all the questions that you answer in Discord.
Yeah.
Like I from like mine and from everyone. So that's like that's not part of the research, and I think everybody is grateful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so see you, everyone.
See you guys.